The Grand Registry Hall was filled to capacity for the final announcement. Delegates from every predator species in known space had gathered to hear the results. And the atmosphere crackled with tension and anticipation. Seojin found her seat near the front this time. No longer relegated to the back with the herbivore observers, the other human researchers sat beside her, and she noticed that the surrounding seats had been left empty by delegates who seemed uncertain whether they wanted to be too close. Dr. Raquel took the central podium and waited for silence to fall over the assembly. The chief evaluator looked tired, as if the past several days had forced a fundamental reconsideration of everything it had believed about predation. The 314th Galactic Apex Registry evaluation is complete. Dr. Raquel announced, "I will present the rankings in traditional order, beginning with individual category scores and concluding with the comprehensive assessment." A holographic display appeared, showing the familiar categories that had defined predator status for 30,000 years. Bite force, breath. First place, Carvathy second, Selkani third. The hall rumbled with expected acknowledgement. Claw lethality, Carvathy first. Breath second, Thornback third. More rumbling. More satisfaction from the expected winners. Venom potency, Sylphin first. Membrane Stalkers second, Acid Weavers third. The categories continued, and humans appeared nowhere in the top rankings for any of them. By the time Dr. Raquel finished the traditional metrics, the delegates had relaxed into comfortable certainty that the natural order remained unchanged. Then Dr. Raquel paused and took a long breath. Now for the comprehensive predatory completeness assessment, the chief evaluator said. This score represents a weighted evaluation of all factors that contribute to effectiveness as a hunting species across all possible environments and situations. The holographic display shifted, and a new ranking appeared. The hall fell absolutely silent. In first place, Dr. Raquel said quietly, with a comprehensive score higher than any species previously evaluated in registry history, humanity. Brecmus Thornclaw was on its feet immediately. "This is impossible," the Carvathy shouted. "They have no weapons, no armor, no venom. Nothing that makes them predators at all. They have everything that makes them predators," Dr. Raquel replied. And there was something almost like fear in the chief evaluator's voice. "They simply have it in ways we never thought to measure." The display expanded to show the component scores that had contributed to humanity's ranking. Pursuit capability, maximum score. With a note that humans could maintain pursuit indefinitely across any terrain type. Environmental adaptability, maximum score. With a note that humans had demonstrated functional capacity in conditions that would kill most species. Tool improvisation, score beyond the measurable range. With a note that humans could convert any material into any tool required for any situation. Cooperative efficiency, maximum score. With a note that human coordination exceeded species that use telepathic communication. Prey recovery rate, maximum score. With a note that no prey species in human history had ever recovered population levels after humans decided to hunt it. Seriously, target flexibility, maximum score. With a note that humans had no natural prey limitations whatsoever. This last category is the one that concerns me most, Dr. Raquel admitted. Most predator species are evolved to hunt specific types of prey in specific environments using specific methods. But humans are not specialized for anything. How is that an advantage? Someone called out. Because it means they can hunt anything, Dr. Raquel replied. Anywhere, using any method they can imagine. And they can imagine methods that the rest of us cannot. Commandries the Vreth rose slowly from its seat, and the hall quieted to hear what the former top-ranked champion would say. "I have watched the human throughout these evaluations," Commandris said, its voice carrying across the vast chamber. And I have come to understand something that I believe we all need to hear. The Vreth turned to face Seojin directly. My people are solo hunters, and we take pride in our individual perfection. But I watched 4 humans coordinate a hunt without speaking a single word. And I realized that we have been thinking about predation incorrectly. What do you mean? Zoreth the Selkani elder asked. The question is not who is the deadliest individual predator, Commandress said. The question is which species has most completely mastered the art of hunting itself. And the answer is the species that can hunt anything, anywhere, under any conditions. Working alone or together, with tools or without them. In any environment, the universe can produce. The Vreth champion turned back to the assembly. The answer is humanity. Vrekness Thornclaw had not sat down. And the Karvathi's voice was harsh with something that might have been anger, or might have been fear. If they are such perfect predators, then why do they seem so harmless? Vrekness demanded. Why do they smile and make pleasant conversation instead of displaying dominance? Seojin stood and faced the Karvathi. Because we do not need to display dominance, she said simply. We know what we are. And we have nothing to prove. That is arrogance. No, Seojin replied. That is confidence. And there is a difference. She looked around the hall at the assembled predators. At the claws and fangs and venomous appendages that had evolved over millions of years to kill. My ancestors stood on a plain surrounded by predators, larger and stronger and faster than they were, she said. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor, nothing but their minds and their hands in each other. And they survived anyway. She paused to let that sink in. Then they did more than survive. They thrived, and they spread across their entire world. And they learned how to kill everything that tried to stop them. Not through strength or speed, but through patience and planning and the absolute refusal to give up. And now you are here, Zoreth said quietly. And now we are here, Seojin agreed. Among the deadliest species in the galaxy, and we are not afraid. Because we have always been surrounded by deadly things. And we have always found a way to come out on top. Dr. Rakil cleared its throat. There is one more piece of data I think the assembly should hear, the chief evaluator said. We calculated what percentage of species that humans have hunted have subsequently gone extinct. The number appeared on the display. It was very high. Humans do not just hunt prey, Dr. Rakil said. They hunt problems, and they do not stop until the problem is solved. Which, in the case of predator species, usually means until the predator is gone. The silence in the hall was absolute. Commandress approached Seojin and extended one massive clawed hand in what she recognized as a gesture of respect. My people hunt to survive, the Vreth champion said. Your people perfected hunting itself, and I think perhaps we should be grateful that you prefer to make friends rather than enemies. Seojin took the offered hand without hesitation. We find that cooperation works better than conflict in most situations, she said. We learned that lesson a long time ago, when we realized that fighting each other was less productive than working together. And when cooperation does not work, Seojin smiled. And for just a moment, Commandress saw something ancient and patient and absolutely relentless looking back through those forward-facing eyes. When cooperation does not work, Seojin said softly, we remember what we were before we learned to be civilized. The reception afterward was unlike any in registry history species that had spent millennia regarding each other with worry. Competition now gathered around the human delegates with questions and curiosity in something that looked remarkably like respect. Seojin found herself explaining human history to creatures that could kill her with a single blow, and they listened with the attention of students rather than the condescension of superiors. Zoreth, the Selkani elder, approached her. As the evening wound down, I asked you before why you did not seem afraid. Zoreth said, I understand now, and you were right. About what? You have been surrounded by things that could kill you since the beginning of your existence, Zorith said. And you learned how to handle that situation. Seojin nodded. We did. But I think you left something out of your explanation, Zorith continued. You did not just learn to survive among predators. No, you learned to become the predator that all other predators should fear. Seojin looked around the hall at the most dangerous species in the galaxy. All of them now regarding humanity with new eyes. We prefer to be friends, she said. We really do, and most of the time, that is what we are. But when you cannot be friends... Seojin met the elder's gaze with the calm, steady certainty of a species that had walked through extinction-level events and come out the other side stronger. When we cannot be friends, she said, we are very, very patient, and we never, ever stop. Zorith nodded slowly. I will remember that, the elder said. Most species do, Seojin replied. Eventually, she turned back to the observation window and looked out at the stars, at all the worlds humanity had not yet reached, at all the species they had not yet met somewhere out there. Challenges waited that her people had never faced. Seojin found herself looking forward to them. After all, humans had never met a problem they could not solve. Given enough time and determination and the willingness to do whatever was necessary, that was what made them the apex predators of apex predators. Not strength or speed or venom or claws. The psychological evaluation wing was the quietest part of the station, a place where the tests measured what happened inside a predator's mind rather than what its body could do. Seojin settled into the assessment chair and let the technicians attach sensors to her temples, while Dr. Rakhil explained the testing protocol. These evaluations measure pattern recognition, strategic planning, prey analysis, and adaptive problem solving. The chief evaluator said, you will be presented with hunting scenarios of increasing complexity and asked to devise solutions. I understand. Seojin said the first scenarios were simple, and she solved them quickly. A prey animal with a known escape route, a hunting ground with limited cover, a target with predictable behavior. The solutions were obvious to anyone who had ever studied predation. The scenarios grew more complex. Multiple prey animals with conflicting escape patterns, terrain that shifted during the hunt, targets that learned from previous attempts and changed their strategies. Seojin's scores climbed steadily. Then came the historical scenarios. Simulations based on real hunting challenges that had been documented across galactic history. One in particular made her pause. This scenario has never been solved, Dr. Rakhil noted. It depicts a situation where a solo predator must defeat a prey species that is faster, stronger, and more numerous, with no environmental advantages and no possibility of surprise. Seojin studied the parameters for several minutes. The scenario assumes the hunt must happen now. She said finally, hunting is typically an immediate activity. Yes, not for humans, Seojin replied. Give me a time extension, and I can solve it. The committee granted her request with visible skepticism. Seojin outlined a strategy that spanned multiple generations. First, learn the prey's patterns through observation over years. Then modify the environment gradually so the prey does not notice the changes. Then wait for natural events to weaken the prey population. And finally strike when the advantage had shifted through patience rather than strength. That is not hunting, Rekness Thornclaw protested from the observation gallery. That is waiting for your food to die of old age. It is hunting, Seojin corrected. Just on a different timescale than you are used to thinking about. Dr. Rakhil entered the solution into the system, and the scenario resolved successfully. It was the first time in 4,000 years that anyone had completed it. A Vreth historian named Meneth had been observing the evaluations with growing unease. And after the session ended, the scholar approached Seojin with questions that clearly troubled it. I have been researching your homeworld's records, Meneth said. Specifically the fate of other apex predators on your planet. And what did you find? Seojin asked. You killed them, Meneth said flatly. Not just competed with them, not just drove them away, but systematically hunted them to extinction. Some of them. Yes. How? Meneth demanded. I have seen the records. And I have seen what these creatures looked like. Cave bears 3 times your size. Great cats faster than anything on your world. Wolves that hunted in packs just as you did. And you killed them all with stone tools and wooden spears. Seojin nodded slowly. We watched them, she said. We learned their patterns. We found their weaknesses. And then we waited for the right moment. For how long? Generations. Sometimes we passed the knowledge down from parent to child, adding to it, refining it, until we knew our prey better than they knew themselves. Meneth's scales shifted colors in a pattern that the translator identified as deep distress. You do not hunt like predators, the historian said quietly. You hunt predators. When we have to, Seojin agreed. The afternoon brought more evaluations. And each one revealed another facet of human hunting intelligence that the galactic community had never considered. Humans could track prey through environments where scent trails and footprints were impossible, using instead a combination of behavioral prediction and environmental analysis that amounted to reading the future from the present. Humans could identify weaknesses in species they had never encountered simply by watching how they moved and how they reacted to stimuli. Humans could devise traps and strategies on the fly, improvising with whatever materials were available in ways that seemed almost supernatural to species that relied on evolved biological tools. Rekna's Thornclaw finally cracked during the trap building. Evaluation. How? The Karvathi demanded, stalking into the testing chamber where Seojin had just constructed a working snare from components that should not have been capable of catching anything. How do you do this without claws to shape the materials, without venom to coat the trigger, without strength to set the tension? Seojin held up her hands. Those strange 5-fingered appendages that had seemed so useless in the claw lethality tests. These, she said simply. Vrekna stared at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. Those soft, useless things. Not useless, Seojin replied. Different. And these different hands can do something that claws cannot. What is that? Anything we can imagine. Seojin demonstrated by untying the snare, reorganizing the components and assembling them into a completely different kind of trap in less than a minute. Your claws are specialized for specific tasks, she explained. Our hands are generalized for every task, which means we had to learn how to use tools instead of being born with them. But it also means we can create new tools whenever we need them for whatever situation we face. Reknus was silent for a long moment. You are not predators, the Karvathi said finally, its voice strange and quiet. You are something else. Something we do not have a word for. We have a word for it, Seojin said. We call ourselves human. That evening, Commandries found Seojin again on the observation deck. The Vreth champion had been watching her throughout the day, and its demeanor had shifted from curiosity to something that looked almost like respect. I spoke with Meneth, Commandries said. The historian told me about the predators your ancestors killed. It was a long time ago. Not that long, Commandris replied. And I noticed something in the records that troubled me. What was that? Your species did not stop, Commandris said slowly. You killed the cave bears and the great cats and the wolves. And then you kept hunting, kept developing new strategies, kept refining your methods even after you had no natural enemies left. Seojin said nothing. You did not evolve to hunt prey, Commandris continued. You evolved to hunt everything. And when you ran out of predators to kill, you simply turned that drive toward other goals. We turned it toward building civilizations, Seojin said quietly. toward exploring, toward creating, toward reaching for the stars. But the instinct is still there. It was not a question. Yes, Seojin admitted. The instinct is still there, Commandres nodded slowly. And for the first time since Seojin had met the Vreth champion, she saw something in those oil-slick eyes that might have been fear. Tomorrow is the final evaluation, Commandres said. The comprehensive scores will be calculated and announced. I know. I think you are going to surprise everyone. Seojin looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between them, at all the worlds she had never seen, and all the species she had never met. My species has been surprising other predators for a very long time, she said. Most of them are not around anymore to talk about it. Commandres had no response to that. Neither of them said anything else for a long while. Just two apex predators standing at the edge of infinity, contemplating what it meant to be at the top of the food chain. The cooperative hunting evaluation was scheduled for the third day, and by that morning, word had spread through the station that something unusual was happening with the human scores. Seojin found herself the subject of curious stares as she made her way to the testing chambers. Though the mockery had faded from most of the faces watching her, 3 other humans had arrived overnight. Fellow researchers who had been called in when the evaluation committee realized they needed more than one subject to properly assess cooperative hunting capabilities. Dr. Minji Park was a behavioral ecologist. Dr. Taesung Kang specialized in evolutionary biology, and Lieutenant Ji-won Beek was a military observer whose presence had been specifically requested by the committee. They want to see how we coordinate, Minji said as they gathered in the preparation room. I read the test parameters, and they are designed for species that use verbal commands or pheromone signals. We will manage. Seojin replied the testing chamber had been configured as a complex hunting ground with multiple terrain types, obstacles, and hiding places. The simulated prey was designed to be challenging for pack hunters, capable of detecting most forms of communication and evading any group that could not coordinate. Silently, Commandres the Vreth had been granted permission to observe from the control room, along with several other high-ranking delegates. They wanted to see how humans hunted together. The 4 humans entered the chamber and spread out without exchanging a single word. Seojin caught Minji's eye and gave a tiny nod toward the left flank. Minji shifted her position slightly in acknowledgement. Taesung glanced at the terrain ahead and raised 2 fingers briefly before pointing at a narrow passage between rock formations. Ji-won understood immediately and began moving to cut off that escape route. The simulated prey detected their presence and bolted. What followed was a display of coordination that left the observers speechless. The humans did not speak, did not use hand signals beyond the most minimal gestures, did not emit any detectable signals at all, yet they moved as a single unit, anticipating each other's actions with uncanny precision. When the prey dodged left, Minji was already there when it tried to double back. Taesung had closed that avenue when it made a desperate break for the narrow passage. Ji-won was waiting. Seojin herded it toward her teammates with the patient inevitability of a force of nature. The hunt lasted 12 minutes. The evaluation committee replayed the footage 7 times, trying to understand how the humans had communicated. There must be some signal we are missing, one technician insisted. No species can coordinate that precisely without information exchange. They are exchanging information, Dr. Rockhill said slowly, watching the footage for the 8th time. They're just doing it through eye contact and body language and shared understanding of how each other thinks. That is not possible, Vreknus Thornclaw said from the back of the room. You cannot read another being's mind through a glance. Humans do not read minds, Seojin said from the doorway, where she had been listening. We just know each other. How? Commandres demanded. How can you know what another member of your species will do without communication? Seojin considered the question seriously before answering. We evolved in groups, she said. For millions of years, our survival depended on understanding what our packmates were thinking and feeling, without making noise that would alert predators or prey. So we developed the ability to read faces and postures and tiny movements that most species cannot even perceive. You are saying that your species evolved to be telepathic, Rekness said with clear disbelief, not telepathic. Seojin corrected, empathic and extremely observant, and very, very good at predicting what other humans will do in any given situation. The committee called for additional testing over the next several hours. The 4 humans were put through increasingly complex scenarios, designed to break their coordination. They were given conflicting information, separated by barriers, exposed to distracting stimuli, and pitted against prey that specifically targeted their apparent communication methods. Nothing worked. The humans adapted to every challenge with a fluid grace that defied explanation. When separated, they simply predicted where their teammates would go and adjusted accordingly. When given conflicting information, they trusted their observations of each other over the data they had been provided. When the prey tried to split them up, they let it happen and simply reformed their hunting formation at the next logical convergence point. This is not fair. One delegate complained after watching the humans successfully complete their 15th consecutive trial. They are not even trying. They are just walking, and somehow the prey ends up surrounded. That is the point, Zorth the Selkani elder said quietly. They make it look easy because for them it is easy, because they have been doing this together for longer than any of us can imagine. Dr. Rekio pulled historical data from Earth's records and displayed it for the assembly. Images appeared showing ancient humans hunting mammoths in coordinated groups, driving herds of buffalo off cliffs through careful positioning, trapping lions in constructed enclosures through patient teamwork. They have been cooperative hunters since before they were fully human, Dr. Rekio explained. Their ancestors hunted in groups before they developed language, before they developed tools, before they even walked upright. Then how did they survive? Rekness demanded. Without language or tools, they had nothing. They had each other, Seojin said. And apparently that was enough. The scores were updated that evening, and the murmurs in the corridors grew louder. Humanity's ranking had climbed from the bottom of the list to somewhere in the middle, and the comprehensive evaluation was not even complete, yet Commandris found Seojin on the observation deck, staring out at the stars, as she often did during her free time. I have been watching your species all day, the Vreth champion said, and I am beginning to understand something I did not want to understand. What is that? Seojin asked. The Vreth are solo hunters, Commandris said. We evolved to be perfect individual predators, self-sufficient and deadly and alone. That sounds lonely. It is efficient, Commandris corrected. But something in its voice suggested agreement with her observation. But efficiency is not the only measure of success, is it? I do not think so, Seojin said. My species learned a long time ago that we are stronger together than we could ever be apart. And we built our entire civilization on that principle. And now you have spread across the stars, Commandris said quietly. A species with no natural weapons, no venom, no armor. Nothing but each other. Is that not enough? Commandris was silent for a long moment before answering. I am beginning to think it might be more than enough, the Vreth champion admitted. I am beginning to think we have all been measuring the wrong things for 30,000 years. Seojin smiled and turned back to the stars. Tomorrow would bring the psychological evaluations, the tests of predatory intelligence and strategic planning. She suspected that would be when the real surprises began after all. Humans had not conquered their world through strength or speed or natural weapons. They had conquered it through patience and planning, and the cold calculating certainty that given enough time, they could figure out how to kill anything. That was the part that other predators never seemed to understand until it was too late. Humans did not need to be dangerous in the moment. They just needed to be dangerous eventually. The assessment chambers occupied an entire wing of the station, a sprawling complex of testing rooms designed to measure every conceivable aspect of predatory capability. Seojin arrived early on the first morning and found the corridors all ready. Busy with delegates preparing for their evaluations, the traditional tests came first. And she knew exactly how they would go. A technician fitted sensors to her body while explaining the procedure in a bored voice that suggested it had given this speech thousands of times. Bite force measurement first, then claw lethality, followed by venom analysis. Sensory range testing, strike speed, and natural armor resistance. "I do not have venom," Seojin said. "We will note that as a 0 score." The technician replied without looking up from its instruments. The bite force chamber was a simple room. With a calibrated measuring device shaped like a thick bar, Seojin bit down as hard as she could and watched the numbers appear on the display screen. The technician made a small sound that might have been pity. "That is approximately 1/50th. The force of a Carvathy bite and 1/20th the force of a Vreth bite." He reported, "I assumed as much," Seojin said. Claw lethality came next, and since humans did not have claws, the test measured her fingernails against a standardized target material. The results were so low that the machine initially registered an error. "Your natural cutting implements cannot penetrate even basic organic tissue." The technician observed with what sounded like genuine fascination. "How does your species kill prey?" "Creatively," Seojin answered. The venom test was skipped entirely, earning her another 0, and the sensory evaluations revealed hearing and smell capabilities far below the galactic average for predator species. Her vision scored reasonably well, particularly in color differentiation and pattern recognition, but it was not enough to offset the other deficits. By midday, Seojin's preliminary scores had been posted on the public boards, and she had become something of a spectacle. Delegates from other species gathered to look at the numbers and make sounds of amusement or disbelief. Vrekmus Thornclaw found her in the cafeteria and settled its massive body at her table without asking permission. "I told you that you would see your place in the natural order," the Carvathy said. "You have scored lower than species. We do not even consider true predators." "The traditional tests are not finished yet," Seojin replied, continuing to eat her meal. "What could possibly change?" Vrekmus demanded. "You have no weapons built into your body. No armor, no venom, nothing that makes a predator what it is." "I have forward-facing eyes," Seojin said. "So do many prey species that hunt insects," Vrekmus countered. "That proves nothing." Dr. Rakil entered the cafeteria at that moment and approached their table with a data tablet in its manipulator limbs. "Miss Yoon," the chief evaluator said, "the comprehensive testing phase will begin this afternoon, and I wanted to prepare you for what it will involve." "I am ready," Seojin said. "The new metrics include categories that have never been formally evaluated before," Dr. Rakil explained. "Pursuit duration, environmental adaptability, tool improvisation, cooperative hunting efficiency, and prey recovery rate." Vrekmus made a dismissive gesture with 2 of its limbs. "More ways to measure weakness," the Carvathy said. Dr. Rakil turned those many impartial eyes toward the predator. "Perhaps," it said quietly, "or perhaps ways to measure things we have been overlooking for 30,000 years." The afternoon tests began in a chamber designed to simulate various pursuit scenarios. Seojin was fitted with monitors that tracked her heart rate, body temperature, energy expenditure, and muscular fatigue. "The test is simple," the technician explained. "You will pursue a simulated prey target until you can no longer continue, and we will measure how long you last and how far you travel. The simulation began, and Seojin started running after the first hour. The technician checked her readings and noted that her vitals remained stable after the second hour. The technician called in a supervisor because the equipment must be malfunctioning after the third hour. Other delegates began gathering at the observation windows to watch the human, who would not stop moving. Seojin's pace had slowed to what she thought of as a sustainable jog, the rhythm her ancestors had used to chase antelope across African savannas. Until the animals collapsed from exhaustion, her body was designed for this. Every part of it optimized over millions of years for exactly this kind of relentless pursuit. Sweat poured from her skin, the most efficient cooling system any predator had ever evolved, and her breathing settled into the deep, steady pattern of persistence. The technicians ended the test after 4 hours because the simulated prey had reached the boundary of the virtual environment. We have never had to stop a pursuit test for that reason before. The supervisor admitted Commandress Devreth had been watching from the observation deck, and when Seojin emerged from the chamber, the champion was waiting for her. "How?" Commandress asked simply. "How what?" Seojin replied, accepting a water container from an attendant. "How did you keep going?" Devreth clarified, "I watched your readings, and your body was failing. Your muscles were burning, and your temperature was dangerously high. Yet you did not stop." Seojin took a long drink of water before answering. "My ancestors hunted by following prey until it died of exhaustion," she said. "We could not outrun anything, so we learned to outlast everything." "That is not hunting," Commandress said, but its voice carried uncertainty now. "That is torture. From the prey's perspective, I imagine it is." Seojin agreed. The environmental adaptability tests came next, and Seojin scored well in every single one. She functioned in temperature ranges from freezing to broiling, adjusted to gravity variations that would have incapacitated other species, and maintained cognitive function in atmospheric conditions that ranged from barely breathable to actively hostile. How is this possible? Dr. Rakil asked after reviewing the results. "Your homeworld has relatively stable conditions. Our homeworld has deserts that reach 50 degrees and poles that drop to -60. Seojin explained. "We have mountains where the air is too thin to breathe and ocean depths that would crush unprotected bodies. And we have lived in all of those places for thousands of years." The other delegates had stopped laughing at her scores. Zorith the Selkani elder approached her that evening with questions in its eyes. "The numbers do not make sense," Zorith said. "You have no natural weapons, yet your comprehensive scores are climbing. Weapons are not the only thing that makes a predator." Seojin replied. "Then what does?" Seojin looked out the observation window at the stars scattered across the void. "The will to keep hunting," she said. "No matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, no matter what stands between you and your prey." "That sounds like madness," Zorith said quietly. "My ancestors called it patience," Seojin smiled. "Though I suppose the line between the two is thinner than most species would like to believe." Somewhere in the station, Reknus Thornclaw was staring at the updated score displays and trying to understand how a species with no claws and no fangs and no venom was somehow rising through the rankings. The Karvathi had no answer, and that disturbed it more than it wanted to admit. Tomorrow would bring the cooperative hunting evaluations, and Seojin found herself looking forward to showing the galaxy what humans could do when they worked together. After all, that was the part that really frightened other species once they understood it. A single human was easy to underestimate. A group of humans working toward the same goal was something else entirely. The Galactic Apex Registry Station hung in the void between 3 star systems like a monument to violence refined into science. Every 100 standard years, the deadliest species in known space gathered here to measure themselves against one another. And this century was no different. Yoon Seo-jin stood at the observation window of the arrival bay and watched shuttle after shuttle dock with the massive station. Each vessel carried representatives from species that had clawed and bitten and poisoned their way to the top of their respective food chains. Humanity had received its invitation 6 months ago. Shortly after achieving recognized spacefaring status, the letter had been polite but carried an unmistakable tone of condescension. "We welcome your observers to witness the proceedings," it had read, "though we understand if your species finds the environment uncomfortable." Seo-jin had volunteered immediately as a xenobiologist. She had spent her career studying how different worlds produce different hunters. Now she would see the galaxy's finest predators assembled in one place. The doors behind her slid open with a soft hiss, and she turned to face her first contact. The creature that entered stood nearly 3 meters tall on 8 jointed limbs. Its body was covered in plates of natural armor, the color of dried blood, and its face, if it could be called a face, consisted mainly of mandibles designed for crushing bone. "You are the human," the creature said through a translation device mounted on its chest. Seo-jin nodded and kept her hands relaxed at her sides. "I am Yoon Seo-jin, representing Earth and its colonies. I am Vreknus Thornclaw of the Karvathi Dominion," the creature replied. "I must confess curiosity about your attendance here. We were invited." "Yes." As observers, Vreknus made a sound that the translator rendered as dismissive laughter. "Your species has no natural weapons worth measuring, no venom, no armor, no claws that could pierce even soft tissue. We manage," Seo-jin said. "I am sure you do. Against the weak creatures of your little world." Vreknus leaned closer, and Seo-jin could smell something like copper and rust on its breath. "But here you will see what true predators look like, and perhaps you will understand your place in the natural order." The Karvathi turned and stalked away on its 8 legs, each step clicking against the metal floor. Seo-jin watched it go and allowed herself a small smile. The next several hours brought more arrivals and more introductions. Seo-jin met the Selkani, aquatic pack hunters who had evolved in the crushing depths of ocean worlds and developed lungs only after they ran out of prey in the water. Their elder, a being named Zorith, regarded her with something closer to curiosity than contempt. "Your eyes face forward," Zorith observed. "That is a predator trait." "Yes," Seo-jin agreed. "But your teeth are so small, and your nails could not cut through wet paper." Zorith tilted its massive head. "What did you hunt on your world before you built tools?" "Everything," Seo-jin said simply. Zorith made a bubbling sound that might have been laughter or might have been confusion, and then moved on to greet another delegation. The Vreth arrived last, and when they did, the entire station seemed to hold its breath. They were the current highest-ranked species in the registry. Solo hunters who combined speed, strength, venom, and intelligence in a package that had never been equaled. Their champion, Commandress, stood 4 meters tall with scales that shifted color like oil on water. Its claws were longer than Seo-jin's forearms, and its eyes tracked her movements with mechanical precision. "So this is a human," Commandress said, its voice surprisingly soft for such a massive creature. "I expected something more. I get that a lot," Seo-jin replied. The assembly hall filled slowly as delegates from 47 predator species took their places. Seo-jin found herself seated in the back, near the herbivore observers who were allowed to watch but never to participate. She did not mind the position. It gave her a better view of everyone else. The chief evaluator, a creature called Dr. Rakil, from a neutral herbivore species chosen specifically for its impartiality, took the central podium. "Welcome to the 314th Galactic Apex Registry," Dr. Rakil announced. "As always, we gather to measure and rank the predator species of known space according to standardized metrics. A holographic display appeared above the podium, showing categories that Sojin had memorized from the invitation materials: bite force, claw lethality, venom potency, sensory acuity, strike speed, natural armor, and kill efficiency. However, Dr. Rakil continued, and something in its tone made the hall fall silent. This cycle, we will be introducing a new comprehensive category that has been in development for the past 50 years. Murmurs rippled through the assembled predators. The category is called Predatory Completeness, Dr. Rakil explained. It will measure not just individual capabilities, but overall effectiveness as a hunting species across all environments and situations. Reckness Thornclaw rose from its seat. What is the purpose of this change? It demanded. The existing metrics have served us well for 30,000 years. The purpose is accuracy, Dr. Rakil replied calmly. Our studies have shown that traditional metrics favor specialized predators while potentially undervaluing generalist species. What generalist species? Another delegate called out. All the apex predators here are specialized. Dr. Rakil's many eyes turned toward the back of the hall, toward the section where Seojin sat among the herbivore observers. Not all of them, the chief evaluator said quietly. Every head in the assembly turned to look. At the human, Seojin felt the weight of 47 predator species staring at her, evaluating her, dismissing her. She kept her expression neutral and her breathing steady. The human delegation will be fully assessed this cycle, Dr. Rakil announced. For the first time, they will participate not as observers, but as subjects of evaluation. Reckness made that dismissive laughing sound again. This will be entertaining at least, Dakarvathi said. We can all use a reminder of what a true predator is not. Several other delegates joined in the laughter. Commentaries the Vreth did not laugh. Instead, the champion stared at Seojin with those oil-slick eyes, and something flickered in them that might have been the first faint stirring of doubt. Seojin met the Vreth's gaze and held it. She had read the files on every species present. She knew their hunting methods, their kill counts, their evolutionary histories, and she knew something that none of them seemed to have considered. Humans had not been invited to this gathering, despite being weak. They had been invited because someone, somewhere, had looked at the data and seen something that did not fit the comfortable assumptions of Galactic Predator Society. The evaluation would begin tomorrow. Seojin was looking forward to it. She had been underestimated her entire career, and she had learned that there was no better position from which to surprise people. As the assembly dispersed for the evening, Zorith the Selkani elder paused beside her seat. You do not seem afraid, Zorith observed. Should I be? Seojin asked. You are surrounded by creatures that could kill you in seconds. Seojin stood and stretched, working out the stiffness from hours of sitting. With respect, Elder Zorith, I have been surrounded by creatures that could kill me since the day I was born, she said. My ancestors learned how to handle that situation a very long time ago. She walked out of the assembly hall without looking back, leaving the Selkani elder staring after her with something new in its ancient eyes, something that looked almost like recognition.